Community activists from Phoenix, north of Durban, are calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to act swiftly on the recommendations by the expert panel looking into the unrest in July last year. The report, among other things, says Cabinet must be held accountable for the poor socio-economic conditions in the country, which contributed to the violence. Over 350 people died in the unrest. Now, to discuss this further, we're joined by Sham Maharaj, the convener of the Phoenix Ubuntu Forum. Mr. Maharaj, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much and welcome to your viewers.
Now, during the unrest, many recalled of just the lack of police presence and the sheer outrage at the time at the level of the violence. The expert panel report, as per my intro, says amongst other recommendations, Cabinet must be held to account for contributing to the violence. What's your reaction, firstly, to the report and the recommendations?
Firstly, we welcome, as the Phoenix Ubuntu Forum, we welcome the recommendations made by the report. A few months after the violence debated a bit in KwaZulu-Natal, we were called upon to give evidence to the expert panel led by Sandy Africa. And we had made a written submission in which we had made several recommendations, and we have been very excited to see those recommendations were in fact carried forward by the expert panel and handed over to the president. So one of the things we did say was that to blame for the riots that happened here, there's a couple of things. Number one, the intelligence services, they really lacked capacity, they really lacked the will, they lacked political will. And the Minister of Police, Mr. Begikele, and the intelligence services were not seeing eye to eye. And they were arguing about who was responsible. And we were horrified to learn, and we made one of the recommendations that both the ministers have let down the country, let down the people, and let down the government of this country, number one. Number two, we've raised the issue of the factions within the ruling party. And this had mainly contributed to the ongoing violence which actually happened. And lastly, the issue of poverty and people living under poor conditions contributed to the looting. And poor people were used in this campaign. It's very, very sad to see people from the squatter community and other poor areas going and looting and burning because they didn't have. But behind it all were the hand of the 12 people, which government said that has been identified, who were the ringleaders of planning the riots. And one of the disappointments is that these people have not been brought to book as yet. But the recommendations which we have seen, we are very happy and satisfied in that the recommendation says very clearly that government and the cabinet must take full and ultimate responsibility for the riots and for the looting and for the unrest, number one. Number two, the whole issue of the intelligence services and the failure of the intelligence services and the police ministry to handle this unrest was a major contributing factor to see how this spreads, around KZN and in Gauteng. So the recommendations which we saw, which we were happy with, was to look at how best the whole issue of the intelligence services and the police services, this is what they call the security cluster. It must be overhauled. And we're very happy to see something happening in this regard. You may have heard that the ministry has now been taken over by government in the president's office. The intelligence services and so on now reports directly to president. The drama about the conflict between the intelligence services and the police ministry, each blaming the other, really led to what we saw in July.
Now, one of the things, of course, that happened, in July was just, how polarized the country was following the violence, not only in the two provinces and parts of Mpumalanga, but also in Phoenix, Mr. Maharaj. Now, you mentioned that you contributed to this recent expert panel report. Now, when you were interviewed about your recollection, of the violence in Phoenix, you stopped short of viewing the unrest, particularly the killings in Phoenix, as a massacre. Why is that?
Well, I think, and we've said this too, there are 4 commissions, by the way, the expert commission being one of it. the Human Rights Commission being the main commission which is in place. And we are quite right now, as we speak, busy putting together a second submission to the Human Rights Committee, because we don't believe that the Phoenix so-called massacre happened by mistake. We believe that the focus was shifted away from what is happening nationally, the faction troubles, the violence and the looting that happened around the country, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. The focus was taken away from there and brought into Phoenix. And this Phoenix massacre was a thing which has been coined through social media by certain sections of the other media, not necessarily yourself, but the focus was shifted away from everything else to Phoenix. And Phoenix eventually became the scapegoat for all the trouble of the country, which is so unfortunate. But what we did say is that time is going to say, and time is saying us that really, did the killings happen in Phoenix? Were the bodies dumped in Phoenix to create an impression that this massacre happened in Phoenix? Now, there is a court case happening, as you may know. Right now, 7 months after what has happened, nobody has been convicted, and that's very strange. Where is the evidence that the police had overnight brought together? Have they tested this in court? Not yet. Why 7 months of delay? Is there really a case to be answered by these people who have been arrested? We are not sure.
Now, as we close off, Mr. Maharaj, I hear what you're saying, but as the Ubuntu Forum in Phoenix, how would you say that you are contributing to the unity in the community? I hear what you're saying about this issue seemingly appearing to be a Phoenix issue, but the reality is there were deep divisions that were seen during the unrest. And of course, Phoenix was placed under the map because of what we saw. I mean, the Human Rights Commission, as we speak, is investigating what happened in Phoenix and finding out if it really was racially motivated, because the reality is, of the 36 people that were killed, a lot of them were black people. So as Ubuntu Forum in Phoenix, there is a problem. How are you then, making sure that unity is restored there?
Well, I've said to another news agency that we've been around as activists from 1978, many years, and I've lived in Phoenix all my life. So we've built relationships with Inanda, in KwaMashu, Bambai, as well as and the other areas where the unrest was. And we've built this unity over years, and it took 6 days in July of last year to destroy this trust which we have built for many decades. And so that we have said, all is not lost. And through the Ubuntu Forum, we have started several projects, which is bringing both communities together. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over a period of time for us to build the trust, and we can rebuild the unity that we've had for so many decades. So we've had food security programs, a hamper distribution program. We've got a gardening project. We've got projects with young people. We've got a sports program, which we have run in Phoenix. People from KwaMashu had come 1 week after the unrest to join the people of Phoenix and say, sport unites, as Mandela has said. Sports would unite our community eventually. So we've got several projects in place which we are bringing communities together. In fact, government, the Deputy Minister of Justice was in Phoenix, and he brought together the families who've been affected by the violence, especially from Inanda and KwaMashu. They brought us together and to talk to each other, to relate the stories that we've had to say to each other. And we thought it was a good starting point to look at rebuilding the trust and unity, so that there's a whole range of activities that we are involved in. And we believe that over a period of time, we can reestablish what we've had over the decades have done.
All right, Mr. Maharaj, thank you so much for your time. That's where we have to leave it for this afternoon.